I'm a DJ boy, going to Dcentral, minting NFT, farming DeFi, being crypto poor but JPEG rich.
So, without further ado, please help me, join me in introducing our next moderator, Cosmos Haas.
Hello everyone, this segment is NFTs, unlocking Pandora's box for real-world assets, featuring Patil with Comdex. Next we have Golomb with FanVestor, Allan Carroll with BaconCoin, and Singh with Tangible. So my name is Cosmos Haas, and I'll be your moderator today. The fact that I'm even here today is a true testament to decentralization and community. I'm just like an accountant, basically, and COVID happened, it hurt, and I knew about crypto, and I said, I need to do something about this. I need to try to learn. And I spent thousands of hours and thousands of hours studying this, and I found Cosmos, and now I'm here. So I just, I'm going to ask a few questions. The first one is, we're going to start down at the bottom, or to the end and come closest. So it's a two-part question. In your opinion, what makes NFTs valuable, and what do you envision the future of NFTs to look like?
Sure. Obviously, value is very, very subjective, but I've got this core thesis that 2017 kind of dominated by ERC20 tokens, and then that token standard dominated this cycle. Back then we saw the kind of ICO hype, a lot of that retail stuff, but things from back then to now look very, very different. So I've got that same thesis here, retail driven. We saw a lot of hype in NFTs now, but all kind of profile pictures. And we've got this core thesis that, yeah, it will dominate this cycle, but look very, very different. Towards the end of the cycle, real world assets in particular is what we kind of think will be the future of NFTs.
Yeah, I mean, we've had non-fungible tokens for real world assets for a long time. In fact, when I checked into my hotel last night, they gave me one, but it was attached to a card and it was centralized, and that token gave me access to my hotel room. But never before have they been interoperable, composable, programmable in the way they are now. And the sort of things that will lead to, I think, are really interesting. In fact, also permissionless. Like that NFT I got last night sat in that centralized server, but when it's on the blockchain or attached to my ENS name, then any application can start to use that and compose it. What we're doing with property and homes for the future, you look at across the world, something we take for granted is that we hold title to a property that you own, a house or some land. And you can enforce rights on that. And that ownership is actually composable in the US and a lot of the world. But in a lot of places it's not. People, like something like 70% of the land in the world is actually not have those property rights that are composable. So as we take that and people leapfrog into the new world on the blockchain with NFTs, we think that will open up a whole new place, and whole new world in those places where people can use that for financing businesses and financing savings and investment in the future in a way that it's just not possible today.
Yeah. So hello. So I work at a company called FanVestor. It's a single platform for NFTs and securities. So to me, speaking in the same way as my colleagues here, capital markets. How do we take it to the next level? How do you create community? That's what NFT is about, right? And how you can finance things outside of traditional capital markets. And that's what we will talk later today.
So I think the rest of the folks on the panel have covered pretty well what makes NFTs valuable. But to me, what I find intriguing about it, and what I truly see as a scope of building in the future for NFTs, is the ability to establish a presence for off-chain assets on-chain, which means any asset that exists in the real world that we deal with physically and tangibly, to create a presence for that on-chain and to kind of establish a clear track record of how that asset is moving is something that's going to be very valuable, especially as we see the worlds of centralized finance and decentralized finance merge together going forward.
Nice. like I said, the fact that I'm even here right now is just a testament of decentralization and NFTs. I absolutely love NFTs. I think they're going to be everything in the future, literally everything. So it's really fascinating what all you guys have going on. With your protocol or company doing, what do you think, how is your company going to capture that real world value?
Sure, yeah. We tokenize real world assets, fine wine, gold bars, watches, and our first property tomorrow. The way that we think about it is it's probably going to end up being a very, very large part of crypto, a large part of the crypto market cap. The total market cap for all real estate is 350 trillion. So if we're able to capture even 10% of that, it's obviously going to, balloon the market cap of crypto. Yeah, huge market. Obviously, a lot of people now kind of getting interested in it. The interesting thing is it's kind of been an abandoned space. 10 years, kind of people have been talking about it, trying it, but now it's getting a fresh wind.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff that's happened in those 10 years. A lot of people trying and playing in the space, and it's cool to see your first property go up tomorrow. We're doing something similar, although instead of tokenizing the property itself, we tokenize the collateral. So the value of the home, we have a lien that's placed on the home, just like with a mortgage, and it's registered at the counties. There's 3,000 counties in the U.S., so it's already somewhat just decentralized and distributed, but we take that and put it on chain, and then you can lend and borrow against it in a way that you can in the real world in a lot of places, but not as efficiently and composable as you can once the NFT goes on chain. We can use it in our lending protocol, but so many other people could take that piece of house. You could sell it, you could pledge it other places, and then that brings up all this power that you have once you own a home and once you own property on chain, and all that value that you talked about is really unlocked in a new way. And so the thing we're doing, we have 35 of these home NFTs on chain already, over 7 million lent, and $44 million worth of home value that's now on chain for people to use and compose. So, as that grows, you look at mortgage lending in the United States, it's about $2 trillion a year is lent, but across the world, much, much more in places where you just can't even get a mortgage or a loan because that collateral is not available in composable ways to use in regular finance. And so you think about the way that some places have skipped straight to cell phones and never wired the whole country. You can skip straight into DeFi for these places and miss kind of the steps along the way, but you get something cool in the end.
Maybe before I tell you about FanVestor, I'll tell you about my background, how we came up with this idea. So in my career, I've taken 2 companies public. I was a CFO of a few public trade companies, and I was in the founding team of BitFury. Maybe you guys know that company. I was a CFO and board member of that company. So I've been blockchain for quite some time in capital markets. And what was missing about, for example, taking David Bowie, when he bought back his masters back in 1990s, and his fans basically financed them. Think about Green Bay Packers being owned by the owners, and not really even making any money. It's not for profit, yet for them the ROI is putting their jerseys on Sunday, right? And saying that's my team. So the concept of taking concept of a Jobs Act with Reg CF, Reg A Plus regulations, where you can bring both accredited and non-accredited investors into play, we created FanVestor. So we are a broker dealer, we do fractional ownership, we do royalty-based securities. We're pushing the envelope a little bit further. We do meta assets backed by securities and things like that. Example, with NFTs, we're right now doing compilation. We have decentralized music vertical and decentralized sports, where we basically create, imagine a vinyl comes with your NFT, and it's new and upcoming artists. And the money that is raised for the NFTs is used to market that music through Spotify and everything else. It's not a money grab opportunity. It's what we see right now, what a lot of artists, musicians do. And we focus more on things like that, or fractionizing a football team in Europe, or UFC fighters wanted to continue and then collaborate. And then also taking, imagine taking, let's say Babe Ruth baseball, right? If you go to eBay, probably $50,000 depending on the year. Imagine fractionizing it and give it to many people at $100 each. the price will probably go up because you have more demand. People, when they go to $100 or less investment, people don't invest with this, they invest with that, right? So that's what I'm thinking about, how we're going to go to the next level. At least what we focus on NFTs securities in sports and media, sports and music verticals.
So for Comdex, actually our journey started in 2018 when we built out our first application, which was an enterprise-focused B2B application for physical commodities trading. And what we did back then was actually, I mean, that application is still live. So what we do on that application is we have commodity cargo assets that exist in the real world. There's the documents that represent the ownership of these cargo. We're able to capture these documents on chain as NFTs. And from there on, we're able to create this sort of ecosystem where institutional traders who trade these assets are able to trade these NFTs on chain. So our journey actually began with tokenizing a real world asset as an NFT on chain. And in terms of what we want to kind of do going forward at Comdex as well is to facilitate tokenizing more and more off-chain assets on chain. So, you know, starting with commodities because that's a $17 trillion industry, and some of the folks who kind of started off building with us already have a presence in the commodity space and helped us understand the space to understand that there's definitely a demand for something like this there. But in terms of going forward, you know, as supply chains around the world grow, I believe there's definitely huge applications for NFTs within the supply chain space as well. In terms of capturing, you know, assets, invoices, documents as NFTs on chain, which can then be used to further create financing and, you know, the other sort of financial ecosystem around it as well.
So everything you guys are saying is fascinating, but I want to try to play devil's advocate. What do you see as like a pitfall or hurdle or regulatory issue, whether it's with your company or just in general with the NFT space?
Regulatory hurdles for sure. No one's really sure, are these things securities? Where do they stand, particularly in the US? We block US users. Another hurdle, of course, is just self-custody. Actually getting these things into the end user's hands is probably pretty difficult right now. So there's a lot to solve for there. And then the third thing is trust. At the moment, crypto is largely trustless. To kind of bridge this gap at the moment requires a lot of trust. So there's definitely some hurdles there as well.
I agree. Those are the three big things, and the user experience for me is the one that's the biggest hurdle that I see. We're still in this place where you've got to go in and get all the things set up, and it takes a lot of research and figuring out. And there's so many places where you can just fall into a trap and a hole and lose money or put things in the wrong place. And so, for our borrowers, we provide, you know, kind of a front end. Centralized place for them to go and get help. They don't even know for some of them that it's DeFi on the back end, but it provides all the value and benefit of DeFi through that front end. Over time, we'll decentralize it and provide better user experiences and put it directly in people's hands. But now we're going through this infancy, kind of like the early days of the internet, where it just was tough to use. You had to be fairly technically proficient. Those things, that's kind of the biggest hurdle, I think, to getting more adoption and seeing this get into more hands and more benefit to people.
As you can imagine, for me, it's compliance. That's what I'll speak about. So we see, it really reminds me back of .com days. I was joking with the guys, I'm old enough to remember that, and earlier. Also ICO days, when a lot of people tried to push the envelope a little bit too much. And Security Exchange Commission is not a bad entity, it's actually good. They're trying to protect investors, trying to protect retail investors, protect our grandparents, or everybody taking their 401ks and putting into something. So there's nothing wrong with it. But some people just try to push the envelope. We've seen earlier this year, already several companies received subpoenas from SEC to review what's going on because they were selling securities and immediately trading in a secondary market on open seas. So basically getting creators in trouble and investors in trouble. Because eventually, as you guys remember, SEC always wakes up, always comes back and puts things in order. And people will get in trouble, unfortunately. Some people will get away, but mostly it always comes back. So compliance, I think, especially in our community, people think, well, I don't want rules, we want to be decentralized and everything else. Some things, unfortunately, have to be centralized because it protects people. regular people, like, and especially with NFTs. What's exciting about NFT? We bring new people into the blockchain, into crypto. They were not before in our space, and that's what's exciting about it. So.
No, I think everything that was said so far is absolutely, it covers entirely what the biggest challenges with NFTs could be. I think custody is going to be a big kind of question that the industry needs to figure out going forward, because anytime we talk about a physical asset in the real world being represented as an NFT on chain, one of the questions will always be, where is it stored, who's taking custody of it, and what's kind of the insurance around that custody. And also, I think compliance is a very good point, because a lot of us folks in the DeFi realm, like to keep our identities hidden behind MetaMask IDs or wallet addresses, and not really reveal who we are behind all of these. But I think as the lines between DeFi and traditional finance sort of start to blur, we will see kind of a need for KYC when it comes to users trying to access maybe real world assets as NFTs on chain, and that's one of the challenges we as an industry might have to start opening up to going forward, whether it is to custody assets like commodities in the real world, or if it's real estate. All of these assets at the end of the day have, at least on the traditional finance side of things, a lot of KYC, AML clearance processes behind it. So I don't see a way around it. I think it's a matter of both industries kind of working together to find a harmonious solution for it.
Nice. So with Michael's point about NFTs, I believe that's the best way for people to learn about crypto. And the biggest hurdle, I think, in general, is just the lack of education. That's kind of why I got involved with crypto. I do shows, and I just try to educate people, because I spent thousands of hours doing this, and I know people that are working 40, 50 hours a week, they just don't have that time. So we do shows, it's called Cosmos Spaces. We have developers come up, and then I just basically put those shows into layman terms for just the average person out there that's just listening in. And I just totally agree with like Michael's point. And like, go back to you, Michael. Like, I'm a big sports guy. So say I bought a ticket and I wanted to put it on chain and use your service. How would I do that?
Sure. Well, for us, like I said, we are, think of us as, maybe you guys heard of Startup Engine Republic for crowdfunding, right? We actually adding it a little further. We're focusing on specific verticals. We work with celebrities, creators. We work with their social media bases and to work. So let's go back to your question. So recently, NUL, one of the singers, he put, and a few other folks, tried to take tickets that people came in to see the show, and it connected them to future benefits. Okay, that's not a security, right? It's a basic item. It's perks, right? Warriors, my team. Go Warriors. They're also thinking about doing things like that, where you can connect and you do fractionalization. Imagine final tickets for finals that probably would be worth something. It's like it's a collectible, right? If it was one-to-one, that's non-security. But it's they're going to go for going to fractionize it. That's a become security, right? So. If that can answer your question about how we put this, but we are primary. We basically do primary offerings, and then later securities can be then traded, not at OpenSea, not at Nifty, but they're traded on ATS platforms like Securitize, Rialto, T0, companies like that, and that's a little different approach.
And I was going to kind of ask you the same thing. Like, let's say I purchased a home and maybe it's paid off. Like, why would I want to use your service as opposed to just like calling the bank?
Well, I think the interesting thing here, especially with your example, is that things blur in crypto. It's not necessarily a security or utility like it is in a lot of places in the real world. It's a security and a utility potentially. And so how do you regulate that when it's, you've got all these things that are kind of lumped in together, and it's programmable, and it's this whole new thing that we've got to really think about and not just try to apply the existing rules to. So, for example, for us, you bring your house, and we do some KYC when you borrow. Obviously, we need to know you own the house, so we register with the county. And then once it's an NFT, though, that's a utility token that you can take and use in our lending protocol. So you can borrow. The rates are better, the experience is faster and easier. So there's all this benefit you get from that. But then you can also that can be an NFT that represents your piece of collateral in the home that you can go and use other places potentially. And so it becomes a utility thing for you. It's not necessarily this thing. And so it's a really interesting place where we're building this new thing that needs kind of new ways of thinking about the regulation and the security around it.
And Jag, I asked you the same thing. Like let's say I was a wine connoisseur, or just like I love watches. Like, what would I use your service for?
Sure. So we have partners, stockists for these things. The largest fine wine retailer in Europe. You browse, you buy the item, we store it for you. You have the NFT. You now take it off in DeFi and use it, trade it, borrow against it. I think more interesting than those things is property. Over 90% of our users have said that they care about property the most, mainly because it's yield producing. So our first property delivers 16.6% annual yield, rent claimable the next day after you buy it, $50 ticket size, straight into your wallet. It's just simplifying the process, right? It makes the process many multiples better than it is currently. Many takes 15 seconds as opposed to a week.
Good.
Let me give you guys another example. So imagine, let's talk about example of David Bowie. So when David Bowie changed his managers back in 1990s, he used to lose 87 cents on every dollar to record label company. When he used bankers to buy back his masters $55 million back in he basically started paying 7.9% interest every 6 months, well, per year, every 6 months to people who financed him. All of a sudden he went from losing 87 cents to basically paying 8 cents on the dollar. That was done during 1999, when people can invest only through New York Stock Exchange, right? And that's it. Imagine if he were to do it today. You can do it through social media, and we can also use, the regulations have changed, but now you can use social media and data science to convert investors, to push it to the masses across the whole world. So what we are doing, and then right now the same model still exists with record label companies. They still take 70 to 80%, and they do 360 degrees, right? Imagine if for artists who don't have to tie to that, they collaborate with their fans. Fans, let's take 40%. 40% goes to the artists, 10% goes to curators, 10% goes to this company like us who would help that process. You get two things. One, the artists feel that they appreciate it, they get more. Two, they create communities, which later can collaborate with these people and push it for marketing purposes. And it just push envelope. So that's kind of a couple of projects that we're working on, just to give you a couple ideas.
And then Sid, you guys are in the commodities and synthetic derivatives. Why would someone want to use your platform, and what value do you bring to those?
So one of the kind of core concepts of finance, especially when it comes to traditional finance, is the ability to kind of collateralize any asset of value and generate liquidity against it, whether it's to borrow against it in the form of a mortgage or a debt. What we kind of want to do is facilitate this process on chain, where you have an asset in the sort of real world, which is a physical asset. You have its presence on chain in the form of an NFT, and then this NFT kind of serves as collateral in the DeFi ecosystem, and people are kind of able to borrow against it and earn, and lenders are able to lend to people who are borrowing with these assets as collateral and see that as a yield to be earned from something that's an asset in the real world. So this is kind of where we come in, where we want to enable, the average mom and pop investor who's in DeFi to kind of generate yield from real world products and instruments that they wouldn't have access to if they were going through the traditional banking routes. A lot of times, traditional investors who have speculative kind of insights on things like commodities aren't actually able to invest directly in commodities because of problems of custody and the cost of and the risks associated with kind of custodying such assets. But to have all of this happen on chain would just allow the average DeFi Joe to be actually providing some sort of liquidity to a financial instrument that's financing a real world asset. So that's where we kind of come in. It's to recognize these assets of value from the traditional world, bring it on chain, and then treat them as an asset of value on chain as well, whether it's as collateral or to exchange and so on.
So we have a little, about 2 minutes or so. So I commend what all you guys are doing. You guys are trying to change the world, and that's why I'm here. And so how would those get a hold of you? What's the best contact for all of you guys?
Tangible.store. There's a contact us form there, but that's how you find tangible. If you'd like to buy some wine, watches, real estate, anything, real world assets on chain in your wallet, live now.
Great. Yeah, for us too, BaconCoin.com is where you can find the DeFi protocol, and then LoanSnap or GoLoanSnap.com is if you're interested in borrowing or creating an NFT against your home, we can help you out there.
FanVestor, you guys can see the website, FanVestor.com. I'll give you my personal email, is mgolomb@fanvestor.com. Welcome.
For Comdex, you guys can find it on comdex.one, comdex.one, and from there you should be able to find pretty much everything, with Twitter, Telegram, and all of that sort.
I just offer my door is always open. We can do some Twitter spaces because 30 minutes with you guys is just not enough. So it would be nice to just keep it going, really, to be honest with you, because I applaud all you guys. Like it's really awesome to see what you guys are trying to do to bring value and from traditional to DeFi, and just this is amazing. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.